final speaker is Martin Woods. I guess I just really have to read this because it's sufficiently funny. Martin is known to many as Wachovia whistleblower. To others, he is the guy with the loud tie and big mouth. Any tie today? No, no tie.
No.
Very disappointing. He is not afraid to call out wrongdoing. He is loud and proud. A former police detective who has the sixth sense, which comes from working against serious and organized crime in London and beyond. It was upon leaving the police service in 2001 and embarking on a career in finance, he discovered another form of organized crime. Were they nicer people? Was it a nicer form of crime? You can tell that in the speech. At Wachovia Bank, he encountered a bank who would bend rules, thinking, and people to accommodate dirty drug money. The bank's problem was Woods does not bend. So if you want a straight man, call Woods the man who delivers the goods.
Okay, ladies and gents, thank you very much for giving me your time. I will speak slowly and clearly, and hopefully I'll give you a perspective from a whistleblower who straddles to some extent the US and Europe, given that when I worked for Wachovia Bank, it was an American bank, and I was in London, so I was dealing a lot with American law enforcement and regulation, and of course with UK law enforcement and regulation. My background before all of that, I was a police officer. I did quite a lot of work in America with the SEC, with the FBI, and with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And the last time I gave evidence in a criminal trial was in America, and the defendants were a UK judge and a Canadian barrister. So I'm pretty experienced in lots of aspects of US, UK, and European laws and banking and whistleblowing. When I blew the whistle against a bank because what I saw was a bank doing something wrong, which was the facilitation of, and to some extent, the capture of Mexican drug trafficking money laundering on behalf of the cartels. I've seen lots of money laundering as a police officer, so I bring that experience and expertise with me when I look at things. And I think it does strike me that I often see things differently to other people. And that can create conflict and tension, particularly with people who perceive themselves to be smart and go one further and even want to be smarter than you. Now, when I blew the whistle, 2008, it was pre-Dodd-Frank. It was clearly pre the more recent 2019, I think is the latest, might be a bit later, 2019 AML legislation, anti-money laundering legislation for whistleblowing in America. Had I blown the whistle 2 years later, ladies and gents, I may have received a reward of $12 million. To be frank, ladies and gents, I'm a bit of a jack the lad, even at the age of 59. I'd be a total moron with $12 million. Are you waving at me because you can't hear me, or are you waving at somebody else? I'm sorry. Okay, fair enough. I shouldn't be looking. I should be just talking away, which I will. So it's not all about the money. And actually, more recently, I was speaking to a very well-known US whistleblowing attorney. When I say known, I mean Cone to many of you. And we were discussing the reward factor. And it did strike me that actually at the time, I wasn't really appetized by it. I wasn't motivated to blow the whistle for a reward. That said, I'm a big believer in what Stephen Cohn said, that the deterrent impact of whistleblowing with rewards is fabulous, ladies and gents. And maybe some people think it's difficult to quantify, but Stephen Cohn was in London last year, in part because his pipeline of work in America is drying up. He expressed anxiety that corporate America is now far more compliant because they do have concerns that one amongst them can anytime go to an authority, be it the SEC or be it the FBI or the Department of Justice, and report a concern of whistleblowing using different pieces of legislation. And that would give that individual a pass. They would not be going to jail for anything they did. Normally, that's what normally would happen. and they would stand to make reward, and therefore the rest of them would be in jeopardy. That mere fact alone, I've always advocated, has a fabulous detrimental impact. Criminals commit crimes for a number of reasons, and part of the motivating factor is, will we get caught? And is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the risk worth taking? And all too often, and if this is the SFO's present position, they are not caught. And if they are caught, the SFO are quite often out-lawyered. And as I said to David Green many years ago, when he was this head of the SFO, I asked him, I said bluntly, why do you not reward whistleblowers? And it's precisely as the moderator said, it's not very British, he said. And excuse my French, ladies and gentlemen, I did say to him, what the front door does that mean? And he didn't answer that because it is a bit of a peculiar thing, but it goes back to, we are conditioned. I don't know about parts of the world, but certainly let me tell you in the UK, we are conditioned as young people not to like whistleblowers. Our parents tell us not to tell tales. And as a consequence of that, we're indirectly being told not to like people who do tell tales. My experience of whistleblowing is it's a constant confrontational combat, if you will, of people. And it's the whistleblower against many other people who come together to defend their own position and to attack the whistleblower. And you will, if you're experienced in reading on the subject of whistleblowing, you'll understand that the purpose of the attack is to attack the messenger in the hope that the message will get buried and forgotten. Now, I've seen it in many ways, so you can probably, not I encourage you for bedtime reading, but you'll read about me in many areas. I did successfully litigate Wachovia Bank, Wells Fargo, as they now are. They paid me a sum of money and told me to leave the bank. And then subsequently, I applied for a job with the Queen's Bank, as it was, now the King's Bank, Coots. And I was informed, in fact, I received the email from a subject access request that I didn't get the job because of what I did at Wachovia Bank. And I said then, and I'll say it now, and it harks back to something that somebody said earlier on in this presentation. You can be perceived as not being employable because you're a whistleblower, but in reality, it's because you're too honest. And also, you're wired in a certain way. You're likely to do it again, and I would blow the whistle again. But I wouldn't necessarily do it for money. And part of my thinking around this, and I know why we're here, we're talking about the reward system. I've had the great privilege of meeting an awful lot of whistleblowers, and some of the most amazing people I've met are those who would come forward and blow the whistle about abuse in care homes and our hospitals. They're on a very low rate of pay and are going to sacrifice all of that, which is not a lot, for no reward whatsoever, ladies and gents. They're just doing it to help other people, to stop harm and to make sure people can have better treatment. And it does make me uncomfortable at times that we in financial services, in the corporate world, are talking about percentages of rewards for whistleblowers. And I understand that's the way the world is. And I understand, come back to something I said earlier on, I think it's had a very good impact upon corporate America to become more compliant. So that's a very good byproduct. But I'm not comfortable with the notion that I would be given a reward for doing the right thing, for telling the authorities, hey, there's some naughtiness taking place at this bank. I think they're laundering Mexican drug money. And I'd be rewarded for that. Yet somebody who says, look, these people are being mistreated, they're being abused, they would lose their job, and something may change, but in the hope, as somebody said earlier on, we want to see action rather than inaction. So something changes, but the biggest change will be that person will probably lose their jobs. And in the industry you blow the whistle in, you won't get a job again. Now, I'm currently working for a bank, and that was, pretty good, but I think it's because they didn't know me when they employed me. Be honest with you, they've since learned a little bit more about me. Would they employ me? Probably not. I'll be honest with you. Even where I am now, I find myself somewhat isolated because I don't don't, as I said at the beginning, I don't bend, and I don't not call things out. So I'm wired in that certain way. I do like the American system because of because of the impact it has. I do think some people deserve to be rewarded. We've discussed this at many meetings in the UK. Mary's been part of those meetings. Journalists have been part of those meetings. If there is to be a reward system in the UK, I would really, really advocate that from both sides, the offending party side and from the whistleblower side, money, significant money goes into a pot to reward those who blow the whistle where there is no money on offer. They're just trying to make life better for people in the health service, in the police service, in public service. But I would close on one thing. Whether you are in America or in Europe, the organization that is the most difficult organization to blow the whistle against, and you're most likely to be very, very severely retaliated against, is a government. And I'll stop there.